It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
And he can do a lot. Things like taking out dozens of armed criminals to performing insane feats of strength, all without having superpowers, make Batman one of the quintessential examples of what a Barbell Black Belt can strive to be. Hey everyone, it's Mason with Barbell Black Belt, and in light of Matt Reeves' The Batman coming out this month, I feel like it's the perfect time to talk about the Dark Knight himself. As the first entry in this series, we will delve into the Bat training from a little bit of a different perspective, because there are tons of videos on this topic. Tons. My personal favorite about the Batman's fighting style specifically was made by Grant Stevens and The Bioneer. It's linked in the description below, so watch it if you're interested. To keep things interesting for this video, we will take a look at some of the principles that Batman used that you can apply to your own training in real life. Also, for the purpose of simplicity, I'll be using Batman from the Arkham games to base my points. I personally believe that the Arkham Batman is one of the best representations of the character, so that is where we will focus, at least for this video. Now, I'm not going to be too specific with the lore or the canonical events of the Arkham timeline for the sake of your patience, so my claims and speculations will be loosely based on the character. First, we will take a look at what it would have taken to acquire all the Bat skills and attributes. Then we will move into what it would take to maintain everything that is built up to that point once the Caped Crusade has begun. Without further explanation, let's get into the video.
Massive gray because I didn't have enough time to paint it.
Becoming a master of any one discipline takes dedication, focus, and most of all, time. On the flip side, becoming a jack of all trades is knowing a little bit about a lot of things, but not necessarily mastering any of them. Batman, on the other hand, has mastered countless subjects, including criminology, engineering, chemistry, and many others, and that's even before we get into the physical side of things. With that being said, Batman would have to be a master of periodization. That being an organized approach to training that involves progressive cycling of various aspects of a training program during a specific period of time. This way, he wouldn't be learning everything all at once every single day, but programming his training and studies in such a way that he could learn new skills while simultaneously maintaining the ones that he's already mastered. Over time, all of this learning in theory could culminate into the Caped Crusader as we know him today. Batman is a martial arts wizard, but even he understands that size and strength are important in a fight. In the majority of the Arkham games, the character bios put Batman at 6'2" and 210 pounds. However, in Arkham Origins, which is the prequel to the other three entries, he is put at 6'2" and 200 pounds. Being 10 pounds lighter at about 8 years before in the timeline leads me to believe that Batman built all of his mass gradually over time instead of packing it all on early on. This makes sense considering all of the high-level acrobatics and feats of artistic skill that he can pull off in the games. He would have learned those skills early on when he wasn't as heavy, and maintained them as the bulk was packed on. Speaking of early on, Batman would have had to have gone through a base building phase, where he established a strong foundation under multiple different mentors. This would consist of cardio, calisthenics, and big compound movements like the squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, etc. During this time, he would also have learned basic martial arts techniques, like punching, kicking, throwing, joint locking, etc. This base would become the foundation for all of the fancy, more technical skills that Bruce would acquire in the future. After establishing this initial base, young Master Wayne would refine his skills and complete his training using a tool that is severely underutilized by most martial artists in the world today: pressure testing. It is one thing to learn a technique and call it a day. It is an entirely different thing to learn that technique and then practice it against a resisting opponent. Any good martial arts practitioner has tested their skills in a controlled environment by sparring or competing. Of course, Olympic Taekwondo sparring is a far cry from Batman's fighting style, but my point still stands that if we want to take our techniques seriously for fighting, we must pressure test them. Bruce knows this to be true, so he uses it to his advantage in order to improve his techniques, hone his strength, and become the best. Once all of the training was accomplished and the cowl put on, Batman would have to maintain his skills and strength levels so that they could be used at a high level on his crusade. Maintaining would require far less volume than building, but it could go down to the point that progress was lost. This would require careful programming considerations from Bruce, depending on the demands that he placed on himself in the field. For strength, heavy barbell movements all of the time would pose a threat to recovery, but I think that lighter unilateral exercises like split squats and one-arm presses would be beneficial not only to keep up strength and size, but to prevent possible imbalances from occurring. In addition to this, body weight movements and practicing acrobatics could be done at a relatively high rate without draining too much from a recovery standpoint. For martial skill, technique practice would still be important, but considering all of the techniques he needs have already been learned, pressure testing alone could provide enough of a stimulus to prevent detraining, and he would get plenty of that in the field. During periods of time when crime was low, Batman could easily get his necessary sparring in with Robin or someone else in the Bat family. With all of the time spent actually fighting crime, and even in training before becoming Batman, recovery needs to be a prime focus. The Bat diet, sleep schedule, and supplementation routine would become just as important as the training itself. Although we can't become Batman for real, we can certainly take some lessons from his playbook. We can't master every subject, but periodization can help us focus our efforts no matter what they are. We don't need to travel the world, but we can find a coach or instructor to teach us how to do martial arts and lift weights. We can't beat dozens of armed criminals, but we can spar against a resisting opponent to test and refine our techniques. Batman is an ideal. We can't become him, but we can be inspired. We can strive to fight like him, not in the way he fights criminals, but with the battles he fights on the inside. Okay, with the way he fights criminals too.
Yeah, punch him.
Die, fool lady!
With The Dark Knight being my favorite superhero, this video was a blast to make. And with the millions of other Batman videos out there, I hope that you enjoyed this one. If you did, like the video and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. I plan to add many more videos to this series, so please be sure to hit that notification bell so that you know when I upload. That's all I have for you today, and I will see you next time.